The Unrelating podcasts are meant to be for education and entertainment. They don't constitute a service or advice. For personal struggles, please reach out to a medical or mental health professional.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. How are you, Kel?
Good. Question for you. Do you have people who are at a crossroads in their life who are trying to decide if they should or shouldn't get divorced?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, that's so many of the couples I see are in that kind of limbo, and it's such a big decision. And sometimes you feel like it's the right one, and sometimes you're not sure. But either way, there's a lot that goes into figuring it out.
We're going to find out with our next guest what she chose to do with her decision regarding getting divorced, especially around 50 years ago when it wasn't necessarily the appropriate or the right societal decision to take. Nowadays, it isn't nearly the issue it was before back then. But certainly still, the most important decision you'll make in your life is who you get married to, because it affects everything else in your life, your financial, your emotional, your personal, everything. And then when you suddenly have to change that decision, it's huge. Welcome to Unrelating with Kel and Michelle, and I'm one of your hosts, Kelly. With me is my co-host, Michelle, a licensed marriage and family therapist who's been providing individual and couples therapy for over a decade. Together, we'll explore how we engage in relationships, why we do what we do, and what causes people to unrelate. Well, joining us today is Nancy. Nancy, where are you joining us from?
West Bloomfield, Michigan.
Okay. Nancy, and you're 91 years old.
I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm lucky.
Yeah, I bet you have a lot of great stories you can share.
Yeah, I think we're going to find that number means nothing because, your sharpness and your wit and your wisdom and all of that is, has nothing to do with your age. It's just who you are.
Thank you.
Start by telling us, I guess, a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
So I was born in Detroit to parents of very middle-class means. My father was a milkman, and my mother stayed at home. And when we were older, she volunteered at Harper Hospital. And I went to Grace Hospital, which had a program with Wayne's University, a 3-year program to become an RN. So I went to school for the first year, the first semester, and I did love it, no question. And I, to this day, am Nurse Nancy, even though I didn't finish. So the reason I didn't finish, I met this tall guy who was finishing his doctorate in mathematics, and I was very impressed. He was nice looking. He was going to have a way to make a living and all this. He was Jewish. Everything pointed in all the right directions. I was all of 18 years old.
Wow.
And so in June of that year, I was so smitten that I quit nurses training and started working. But in October of that same year, from February to October, went from meeting him to marrying him.
Wow.
And we got married in October. And in December, we moved to Huntsville, Alabama, for him to work with Dr. Werner von Braun, who was a rocket scientist that they had gotten from Germany, and it was to work on the Redstone rocket. And he would be a mathematician. And
what year is this, you think?
That was 1952.
Okay.
We lived in a house trailer, a 2-bedroom house trailer. It was 31 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And we had it parked on a private piece of property. And I got pregnant a year and a half later, or almost. And in the second year, in October, my daughter Judy was born.
Mm-hmm.
So then I stopped working and I stayed home, and I had friends, and we lived in the trailer, and I was very young, and it was all fine with me. I didn't know anything better. Well, when I was living in Huntsville, he was jealous of my time, but he was very controlling. And anytime we had an argument, it wasn't all that often, but when we did, we would have an argument. He would say, "Go home." And I kept, by then I would be crying. I'd say, "I'm home. I'm already home." no, go back to your mother. Go back to your mother and your father or something like that.
In Detroit.
In Detroit, yeah, yeah. And I would cry so hard that the next day my eyes were all puffed out. So if you can believe this, if I could help it, we only had arguments like on Friday night, so that Saturday and Sunday my eyes could recede, and by Monday I could go to work and not look like I had
Wow.
been crying all weekend. And that really worked. I mean, I wouldn't just get into a fight with him, but by not getting into a fight, I did whatever he wanted me to do.
Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure it took a lot of, effort to not
Yeah,
trigger
yeah,
him.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Um, he spent money um, inappropriately on his hobbies
Mm-hmm.
and some of the bills, and as all this happening, these 7 years, it got worse. But he spent money on things that he shouldn't have, and he spent money on presents for Judy. And he would, after an argument, he would usually buy me something, not like real expensive jewelry, but something
Mm-hmm.
just to make up. Usually, he would apologize. And these are, I guess, Michelle, you know this better than I do. These are typical things of people with anger issues and whatnot. And he was very demanding and jealous of my time. Even if I was talking to his sister-in-law, he would, and if I was talking too long, he would get jealous of it. He didn't say I'm jealous. I just know this. I know this now that I've been out of it and know what all of that was about. I went through plenty of therapy myself.
Yeah,
Um,
and sorry to interrupt, Nancy, but I don't want to put this label on you in terms of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, but I just want to point out that it doesn't. People assume that that looks like getting beat up physically or
right. Yeah.
punches in the punching holes in the wall, but the control, the cycle, you having to walk on eggshells, him fighting and then having a honeymoon phase, which is where he's trying to make up and give you gifts and be very lovey-dovey until the next time it hits.
Right.
That's a very typical part of that cycle.
Yeah. So it didn't happen really often. Probably the really big breakdowns for me were 4 times a year. I mean, I would get it until I couldn't take anymore, and then I would just fly off the handle.
It sounds very chauvinistic too to me for some reason.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
But part of this was the time. Not really. I mean, part of it was the time of life,
Sure.
because men were it and women were subservient. So he finally had a nervous breakdown, and he ended up having to retirement on a disability, and we moved back here.
Can we back up a second? What was going on with him that he had this mental, you
When
said,
he had a mental
breakdown? Yeah.
well, he was starting to get to the point where he couldn't go to work, and it seems to me that he was like he couldn't do anything except get off the couch, and um, I don't remember a doctor in Huntsville being part of this. I know who it was when we got back here. He had a psychiatrist for 18 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So it was work related then.
Part of it, very interestingly, which he never verbalized until way, way later, was that he was working on something that destroyed people. And
Oof.
that was really very against his inner believing.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, the whole time he was working, he was like, nobody knew. I don't know that he knew right away, but it was just eating away at him.
He was working on weapons of war, you mean?
Yeah. When Judy was, she may have been 3 months old or something, I came back to Detroit by myself. I flew back here with Judy for a visit, but I came back and stayed with my parents. And I just broke down and I said, I can't live with him. And I don't know how this is going to work out, because I can't stand it. He's so overbearing and he's this or that. I can't remember that part. I just remember them saying, you need to stay with him. If you married him, you have a child, you need to stay with him and raise Judy and all this stuff. it turned out to be, I stayed with him for 22 years. It turned out to be very detrimental on both Judy and me. But when we got back here, he started with a psychiatrist. He was going several times a week, and it did back off a little. And his psychiatrist would never talk to me and never heard my side of it. And I did go to Jewish Family Service here, and I had therapy with a lady here who was very, very wonderful for me, and started giving me some rights of my own and some personal, just making me feel like I was okay.
And probably some empowerment, like how you felt wasn't wrong.
Yeah, I don't even remember what the words were, and I don't even know if we knew those words then, so to speak, because it was like I keep saying that, anybody talks about divorce, when I was divorced when I was 40 years old, 45 years old. And it was actually, 40, because I was single for 5 years.
That was a big decision to make at that time, correct?
Yeah. Oh, and I know what I was going to tell you. And nice Jewish girls don't make waves and don't get divorces. They just didn't then. A few did. When you did, it was a disgrace to the family, so to speak. Not at all like it is today. Today, if you're not happy, you get out of it and go on about your business. People do grow separate. But anyhow.
What was that conversation like when you approached him about it?
Oh, my God. Well, when I finally decided I was going to get a divorce from him, and I had to be the one who did it. So I cooked in advance, and I had a whole freezer full of food, and I made sure everything in the house was just perfect. All the laundry was done and everything. I had the blessings of the people at work, and I said to him, I'm taking the living room furniture, because we never sat on it. It was like pretty. You didn't go in there.
One of those rooms.
What was his reaction, by the way?
Oh, he could hardly believe it. And you know what? I hardly remember, because it was so painful. I didn't want to do that to him. But it finally came to the point where it's either him or me. I guess I said that to him too. It was either him or me, and I had to save me.
Yeah.
And, he, as obnoxious as he was, I don't think he believed that could be the case, why I was leaving. He never said, do you have someone else? And I didn't. There was nothing like that. It was strictly get out and be on my own, and not have that pressure overbearing me all the time.
Well, also, you put a lot of legwork into being prepared for that. So you made your decision, and you planned. And
I would have done it today. God forbid. I don't have to and won't.
But you got your ducks in a row, and you had the blessing of your work, you said. But I'm also curious about the families, because even though it's easier these days to get divorced, I still hear people say that their families are pressuring them to stay married, even if they're in really bad relationships. Their parents will say, stick it out, or for the sake of the children, or there's all these reasons. So once you made that decision, I'm curious.
By then, my parents thought he was just terrible, because they knew he treated me. And his parents kind of knew, but they, it was their son. And actually, after we got divorced, his parents didn't talk to me. His sister-in-law did. We still talk. We don't talk. If we run into each other, we're very cordial. But the parents, the mother, never could forgive me for leaving her sonny boy.
Even knowing what you were going through at the time and his behavior, she still.
Oh yeah, she did know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Her little boy couldn't possibly be a bad person.
I'm trying to understand for context. So the divorce was in the 70s?
We got back. Julie was born in 54. We got back in 59. So it was in, and when we got divorced, I'm sorry. Yes, in 70, like 70 and 71.
Yeah, so early 70s is when all of this is happening.
Would you have hired a lawyer back then, or how did you mediate?
I did have a lawyer who didn't even show up Ernie didn't even show up at the
Wow.
when they when we
The court.
go to court. We got a Jewish divorce. We got a civil divorce.
So after this, how did that affect you mentally? Did you have this feeling of like, I guess just calm
Well,
or
I had friends. I think I was in therapy. And by the way, I called his therapist the day before I was going to tell him I was going to leave him. And I said, I want you to know, I had a really fight to get him on the phone. And I said, I want you to know. Oh, I think when I called him, I said, this is Nancy Goodman, Ernie's wife. And he said, I can't talk to you. And I said, you have to listen to this. I mean, I like stood up to him. That was a big thing for me. I
Yeah.
stood up and said, you have to listen to this because tomorrow I'm going to tell Ernie I'm going to divorce him. And if he collapses or anything else, I want you to be aware. He said, thank you very much. That was that. So I didn't get any support from him, but I did from Jewish Family Service. And from my friends who listened to me, cried with me when I would talk about what it was like living with him. I just walked in that apartment, closed the door, and I was like, I'm free,
Mm.
So it was a feeling of relief and a feeling of maybe even of joy.
Always a feeling of joy. Yeah.
And the importance of community. You had your friends, your therapist, your Jewish community,
Yeah.
just at your work, like supportive people in your life that were cheering you on for this.
They were wonderful. I was involved in one of the temples here, and the rabbi and I started a single group for single adult over 35 or something, Jewish single people. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because you were in your early 40s, right? You said 40?
Yeah, I was just, I think, 41.
Yeah, so I mean, 41 is still half of your life,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got plenty of time to restart, right?
Yeah. And so I dated a lot, and I dated one fellow for a long time, and I really wanted to get married to him, and he wouldn't, and he wouldn't, and he wouldn't. And I found out after I was with him for like 3 years or 2.5 years. I lived part-time at his place and part-time at my apartment. And I found out that he wasn't sure whether he was gay or not. And so he had no intentions of ever marrying me. I said, you could have a grandchild, you could have an in-law, you could have family, blah, blah, blah. And he wouldn't. And so I broke up with him. I left him, moved out during the day when he was at work with a friend who helped me.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And I said to him, I'm done. That's it. Well, why would you leave me? Because I want to get married.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good reason.
And that reminds me, because you met Bernie at 18. So dating at 40, 41 was really your first experience of meeting new people and having dates. And
the second thing I did was go to my gynecologist and say, I want my tubes tied. And wait until you hear this. And he said,
I'm sure that went over well.
He said, I can't do that without your husband's approval.
And dear.
What do you mean, my husband's approval? I'm getting a divorce. It's my body. It sounds like no.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? He said, all right, I don't know if he forged a signature or what he did, but he took care of it for me. And he did tie my tubes. Oh, God. When I think back on these things, it's just, amazing. It's just amazing. But I really, once I went from being a very shy person who didn't think I had anything worth, or that I was pretty worthless, or my sister started it by telling me I was fat and stupid. She was 3 years older, and I heard that all of my growing up years. And I really wanted to get out of the house, even though I was living in a nurse's residence when we met and then got married. But I really wanted to get away from the family. I know why I did it,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know then. I was in love, and we got married.
So looking back though, now you have time to reflect. Do you feel like that decision to get divorced was the best decision of your life?
It was way overdue because Judy really suffered from it. she suffered from a father who was distant but bought her presence, and that was how he bought his love. And that's how he bought his love to me and to other people and to strangers. I mean, he just he didn't know how to show it, and I don't think he knew what love really meant. I mean, when I see what kind of a life he led, Judy understands a lot of that now, and I know it's the reason she tries to heal people. She's really healing herself. So then we come to the good part. So then I was single. I was the gay divorcee. I used to meet this guy in the grocery store from time to time. His name was Manny. And I knew him from B'nai B'rith 20 years before that. I'd see him in the grocery store and I'd say, "Hi, Manny, I'm Nancy," or "I'm Nancy Goodman," or what. I'd say, "I know who you are." You don't need to tell me who you are. Well, I don't want you to be embarrassed and say, "Oh, God, I know her, but I don't know what her name is." And that is the kind of person I am. I will give my name so that people are embarrassed.
That's sweet.
Oh, God, who is she?
Never assume people
Right.
know your name.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then his wife passed away. Well, I was single and he was still married, and then his wife passed away from cancer. And I went to her funeral and I saw him, and one time, almost a year and a half later, I happened to see him in the grocery store. And I said, "Hi, Manny, how are you doing?" "Well, okay." And I said, "Are you dating?" Because I really had no interest. I just cared. And so I said, "Are you dating?" He said, "Well, just a little bit." And I said, "How is it? Did you call her again or something?" "No, not really." And I said, "You know what? Let me say something to you. Let's go out to dinner, and I'll show you that it's not hard to take a lady out to dinner." I swear to God, I said that. I'll tell you that it's really not that hard. You know me, it's easy. And so he said, "Oh, that would be really nice." Okay. So that was on a Saturday afternoon. I said to myself this Sunday around lunchtime, "He's never going to call me. He's too scared. You know what? I'm going to call him." So I call him up and I say, "Manny, this is Nancy Goodman." He says, I said, "I just figured you might not call me." And he said, "Can you wait a minute? I'm talking to my daughter on the other line." So he gets on the other line and he says to his daughter, Ellen, "She's calling me." I found this out. "She's calling me." And Ellen says, "Well, then take her out and go to a nice place." So he comes back on. We're talking, and I said, "I figured you're scared to death and you're not going to call me. And you know me, I'm easy, and let's just go out to dinner sometime. Let's just make a date." And he said, "Well, I didn't take anything out for lunch. I mean, for dinner, take anything out of the freezer for dinner yet for tonight. So we want to go tonight?" I said, "Sure." And I always kid him that if he had had hamburger on the sink, we would not have had a date that night.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the Steak and Ale, and I don't know if you ever went there. I mean, I don't know if it was even open, but they used to have this huge cleaver. I mean, can you see me? A big cleaver this long, and it had the menu on it. And I had a big purse. And if you can believe this, while we were sitting there, I stole that cleaver. And I have it now. It's in our mementos area. So anyhow, we had a very nice dinner. As I have found out since then, and he demonstrates it every single day for 45 years. It'll be 46 years in April. We were both so scarred when we came into our marriage, and we felt so sorry for each other and what had happened, and it just unfolded over the time, and we didn't say it all beforehand, but it was a very, very hard life for both of us. He was married 28 years, and I was married 22 years, and we got together, and we got together in February or so. We were engaged in April, and we were married in June.
Wow.
That's how long it took. never looked back. We always have been right on the same page. We don't argue. We don't fight. We don't have to say, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
We don't say things to each other that are mean, ever, ever. And
Yeah.
I probably should be, I'm the leader. I'm the talker. He's very shy. He always was very shy. It's not that I shut him up. He was always very shy. Um, he's just a wonderful, wonderful man. And when I was sick for a year and a half, he took care of me and wouldn't let anybody else in the house. And he was absolutely wonderful. He learned things about running a household that it was transparent to him for as I say, the first 45 years. So now
Yeah.
he knows how to make the bed. And now he always did dishes, but
Yeah.
he knows how to take care of this or that I always used to do. I do all the social stuff, all the appointments and things.
I bet the fact the both of you went through these really, really hard marriage experiences
Yes,
just made both of you even stronger. And ultimately, you don't take each other for granted at all because you know how you through the worst of times, you now can appreciate
right.
this even better. I bet you.
There were some things that we decided on, mostly me verbalizing it. I'm going to try to be the best to him 51% of the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
want him to be the best to me 51% of the time. So we are trying to be the best to each other all the time, better than the other one. I also said we can agree to disagree. And that does not make one of us wrong and one of us right. So we have said that a few times. He'll say, mostly it's which way to turn. I mean, we don't get involved in serious stuff. You want to turn left? Okay, honey. Darn, I did it the wrong way. I don't say, see, I told you so. I never, ever do anything like that. I would
Mm-hmm.
not like to hear it if it was said to me. So I'll say, I won't either don't say anything. I said, so it's all right. So you make a turn at the next corner and go around
Right.
the block. It's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
This day I say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that works when you have two kind people. But like you were already considerate because even that story of like making sure the freezer was full and the laundry was done, and you call the psychiatrist. I mean, that's a level of thoughtfulness that
Yeah.
is clearly a trait of yours. But knowing that both of you found someone you had a lot of love to give, and you found someone who complimented that and lifted that up,
Yes.
it's a great
And,
thing.
I think I have to tell you that, as I said, my mother was a pink lady or whatever they called her at Harvard Hospital. And so she was a lot like that. I mean, she just was a lot like that. I can't even remember specifically. I just remember and thinking she was a warm, loving lady, even though I was almost bigger than she was before I remember her. She was a little tiny thing, and I was big like my dad. And I just kind of remember one time in particular being so tired on the bus coming home from downtown, and I just leaned over on her and fell asleep on her shoulder or in her lap or wherever, but that she didn't push me away. And
Yeah.
those were important things. My sister pushed me away. We shared a bedroom, and we had twin beds with a chest of drawers in the middle. And right down the middle of that chest of drawers was my side, and that side was her side. And don't touch it. Don't put anything on my bed. Don't touch any of my clothes. We shared a closet. Those things they still affect me.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear anybody else who's having problems, I go right back into that position of, remembering how awful that is.
Yeah.
So,
But also I take your point. I agree with you on some level when you were saying that like your daughter is healing people now and fixing them and that's helping her heal. I also think though to acknowledge that those are traits that you possess that you instilled in her as well. So
that's what the kids tell me.
so honor that
Yeah,
piece too.
yeah,
It's not just
really
about fixing herself. It's about having a kind heart, and that's something that you brought up in her
yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah. People say that. Where do you think she learned it?
Yeah, exactly.
Looking back, I mean, what advice would you give women in your similar situation, especially looking back 50 years ago? and how difficult that was. But what advice would you give women in the same sort of situation now?
Well, I just think they should heal themselves in this lifetime. If you're really still suffering over decision you made to get a divorce, or if you really think you're going to, I never say, oh, you really should stick it out, or well, you better take a look at it, or all that. You need to make yourself happy, and you need to not take on all trouble and despair just to keep yourselves living together. It's just not worth it. One quick little thing that we were going to talk about, and that was making things easier for your kids when you die.
Yeah, I wanted to pick your brain on that because I know you have a strong opinion that's
It's
very spot on.
so important to not leave all this stuff. And we don't even have a lot of money or a lot of personal effects, but don't leave this all up to nothing. We have, because my daughter lives in town, she's on the checking accounts, the financial records, the attorney's records. She's my advocate in medical things, and I am Manny's advocate, and then his daughter in Florida, who could be here in 3 hours if she had to be. She is his advocate for. But we love each other like parents, and the whole family loves each other. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. But we've given them copies of all kinds of pieces of paper. They know exactly where things are. Judy has come over here and had her phone in her hand, and we walk through the bedroom, and I show her where jewelry is. Some of it I've sent to her house so that we don't have to worry about it. And all that is so important to make it easy for the kids when we're gone, and we are both going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I have made the promise to Manny 45 years ago that that I would survive him, so he wouldn't have to be alone again. And he reminds me all the time. Remember now, you made a promise.
Yeah, I think good estate planning is really smart, right? Because you want to leave things in, I guess, tidy order when we go.
Clear and findable, because that can be difficult if the children don't know, like, what if you had an account, if you didn't, if you have wishes or you don't. Yeah.
Insurance policies are all in a safety, not safety deposit box, but a little thing that sits on the floor that has a lock on it, and it's fire resistant. Yeah.
I have copies of both of my parents' wills in here at home, so I'm well aware of what their wishes are, which is, I think, really helpful.
Also, I noticed, like you said, you moved into a senior living while you still had the faculty to do so.
Yes,
that seems important.
So important. And when they have open houses here, we are a couple who go down and we sit there in a room, and people come to meet us because we live here as a couple, and especially as a couple, if couples come in, to tell them what it's like to live here. It is just the best thing in the whole world. That when we were in our condo, there came a time I was president of the association, the condo association, for 35 years. When I got a phone call that somebody had needed something that was broken, whatever, and I hung up the phone and I said to Manny, that's the last call I can take. I cannot do this anymore. And I called up your apartments. We had already seen it once, and we came out here, and Manny took the paperwork off the internet and filled it all out before we left. We came here, we saw this apartment, we said we wanted it, and she said, well, go home and think about it and fill out the paperwork. And he said, what paperwork? And she said, this. And he said, you mean this? And she said, you're the first people who have ever walked in here and had their paperwork filled out in advance. We knew we wanted to move
that
here.
tracks. Yeah, that sounds like you.
Nancy, do you think it's important for people as they get older to downsize, to start getting rid of a lot of their stuff?
Absolutely. I have stuff. If we have stuff, and we even talked about that in this 2-bedroom apartment that we should get rid of. It's just not necessary anymore. But absolutely, you don't need all that room. You only need room to sleep, and to
Hmm.
eat. And we took a 2-bedroom apartment because we needed 2 bathrooms, period.
Hmm.
No question about it. And so we got that. Um, uh, People who have stairways to go up and down should not be in a house that's got 2 floors, like my daughter, and
Mm.
she's doing stuff about it now. You never know. The first thing that happens is one of the spouses either gets sick or falls. And
Hmm.
that's the beginning of the end of the whole thing. If you're both feeling well and you can make decisions together, it's so much easier to move than to just have your kids pick up everything and shove it in your apartment and say, here, this is where you're living now. So we came in here knowing full well we did get Judy's approval. She thought it was a wonderful place and a wonderful apartment, and that was it.
Yeah.
There is no question, and we were in our mid 80s when we moved. Young 80s, sorry, young 80s. 2.5 years.
Yeah, I asked because this is the conversation I have with my mom, and to a degree with my in-laws too, just about starting to think about that.
Yes.
My mom's good about it. My mom is 78,
Okay. Yeah. And your in-laws,
early 70s, so they've got plenty of time.
you got a
But
little bit of time if they're in good health.
hmm.
Your mom should be in a place where she makes friends. We have so many friends who worry about us, and we worry about them. And the older you get, the more friends die. And then you don't have your old friends anymore. Then you have to have new friends, which
Yeah.
is kind of funny. It's not the
Yeah.
same, but
Hmm.
we're all in the same boat. So you don't have 40 years to go back or 50 years to go back with. You only have knowing each other for a couple of years or 5 years, whatever.
Hmm.
But
And as
we're all in
difficult,
the
yeah, as difficult as it has been for you all to be losing friends and going through that grief, I firmly believe that probably the biggest factor of why you and my parents and that whole community are thriving is because of those social connections, the
yes,
friendships, seeing each other, having activities,
right,
being with each other. That's so
right,
fulfilling, and not just mentally, but cognitively fulfilling as well. So.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
that's so I'm so inspired that you guys are such party animals.
Michelle, when you say party animals, though, do you mean by, like, in bed by 8? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I
Yes,
mean, it depends. They have friend groups that wake up at 5 a.m. and that's when they're out and about having fun,
yeah,
and some that stay up till midnight having fun. And
right. Oh, not
it's
anymore. No, no, no.
yeah.
And we just when we're done with dinner, because we have dinner. That's another thing. I don't cook anymore. We have dinner
Mm.
5 nights a week downstairs. It is so wonderful. We bring up leftovers for lunch the next day or
Oh,
day after. That is so wonderful. Even
yeah.
if it doesn't taste like Mama used to make, it doesn't matter. And this is what I talk about because now we're here, and
Hmm.
nobody, they set the table, they cook it for us, they serve it to us, they clean up after us. What more could you want at this age?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Nourishing and just eat it and shut up and eat your tuna fish.
Yeah.
See, not only do you have leadership skills, but you have therapist skills because you're helping people cut through the BS.
Right.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I know it. I would have made a wonderful therapist. I
Yeah.
know. I never, when I got divorced, people said, I said, I really want to be a nurse. And they said, go back to school. I said, at 40, I'm not going back to school. I really couldn't afford it. But
Hmm.
besides that, I didn't want to study like that. But
Yeah.
I love the human body. I love the brain and the whole business.
Nancy, after 90 years, do you have a favorite part of your life that you can look back on fondly? Like, what, looking back over those years, what stands out to you? What period of time do you love the most?
Probably the most is the grandchildren and
Hmm.
Mm.
their children, the great grandchildren. It is unbelievable for me to watch our grandchildren making their way in the world and making a good living and being successful and having children. And then the children call me Gigi for great grandma. It's Gigi, and I hear them say Gigi, and it just, it just goes right through
Hmm.
my heart. They are, they're all doing well. We're so proud of them, and they're all making their way in a different way, and we don't always agree with everything we do. We never say a thing because it's not our business. They're going to make mistakes. So we made mistakes, and they seem to be doing just fine making whatever mistakes they made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
Well,
interesting.
yeah, that makes me think. You mentioned that, you noticed that your daughter was affected by you staying in your first marriage. What decisions have you two made about that time, or how have you reconciled that?
I don't really think that we have finished. I don't know if we ever will. I have finished my part as well as I can. She really doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, she now acknowledges that he was a jerk, and when she knew he was, and she was taking care of him before he died, and she knew what a jerk he was, but she didn't say it for a long, long, long time. I mean, for just probably the last maybe 8 or 10 years that she's willing to accept the fact that he really was a jerk and that he really, he damaged both of us.
Hmm.
And I guess she feels like she's made peace with her maker and with her own life and what it was like and what it was like for her mother. And I know she knows that it was really tough for me, and she's beyond grateful that I have Manny in my life, and so are Manny's kids. His one daughter is, the other one passed away, but his daughter is so thrilled that I'm in their life, and um, uh, I don't think that she and I are ever going to have a whole lot of serious conversations about that. I once tried to have one with her, and she got so angry she didn't talk to me for 3 months. That's
Mm,
a long time ago. It
yeah.
was when I was single, so it's like close to 50 years ago. But she was not about to talk about it. So
Well, I mean, I say not all issues need resolving. So if it's not impacting your relationship, then there's no need to force a conversation. But it did come into my mind because you guys are very close. So
we
I
are
was
close,
curious.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and we respect each other extremely. I really am so proud that she's my daughter and that she takes care of things like she does,
Hmm.
and how she took care of me when I was sick.
Yeah.
And it was just,
Where do you think she learned it from? Now I'm
that's
going
what
to join that bandwagon.
your mother says. Where do you think she learned it? Yeah.
How refreshing is it to talk to a 91-year-old who's that smart, that active, that giving, and to share all those things with us? I thought that was just really cool because she's got a wealth of life knowledge that she shared with us.
It's incredible. And her memory, which I can't even remember what I did last week. And she's remembering things from 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
To have that clarity, and also to have spent that time wisely, I guess I would put it, to have grown as an individual and understood herself better. And I don't know, I'm so inspired in the sense, like, isn't this the ideal situation? Like, I would give anything for my life to get to 91, to have found one of my people and spend 50 years with them and have a loving family and be involved in my community. And I don't know, like, every checkbox I would want at the end of my life, I feel like has been able to live, and I don't know if it's envy or hope or what that I feel. It would be a blessing be in her situation.
No, I agree. To have your health and have your wits about you at 91. I mean, I don't see her stopping. Quite frankly, she's doing so well. I mean, at her age, and being in those social circles definitely helps. I couldn't help but think about, as she talked about getting divorced from her first husband. My parents got divorced after 28 years, so I was kind of, it kind of reminded me. Well, it did remind me a lot about that, and the decisions that my mom made at that time. Not too different from some of the decisions that Nancy made. So I could kind of relate to some of the things she was saying, and definitely understood and certainly could empathize.
And I don't know if, like, people are keeping in their brain the social and cultural context to the time when, like, in the 60s and the 70s when all of this was happening, just how much more that story I don't know. She was in her 40s, a Jewish woman who made the decision to get divorced in the 70s. That's the fact that she did that shows so much strength.
Yeah. And look, I mean, obviously it was the right decision, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It certainly has paid off. She met somebody else who is her person, is her partner. But she probably couldn't have gotten to that point had she not gone through those hard times, because that
Yeah.
really helped form who she was, who she is.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed, I said one of her persons. And I don't know if you want to get into that here as we're wrapping up, but maybe on a show we can talk about that, because I don't know how you feel about whether there's more than one right person for you in the world.
Mm-hmm. I don't. No, I think there probably is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think you could argue there's probably a lot of people who you could live your life with, but why even go there? It's like you're with.
No, I know, but
No, I mean,
to
yeah.
me, it's like even people who divorce and find someone like who remarry or get in another good relationship. Like obviously you got divorced for a reason, but I like to disabuse, especially young people, of the notion that there's only one right person or there's a soulmate that you're meant to
Mm-hmm.
be with. That really F's with some single people when they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to find the one or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I think friendships are proof that there's more than one person that you connect with in the world that, that you love deeply. And obviously you're attracted to more than one person in the world. So it's possible to have different combinations of romantic relationships. I guess that's my point. So, but
Yeah.
definitely a tangent.
No. No. When I got divorced the first time, I thought my world was crashing around me, and looking back, it was just another really important learning experience that really sort of uh, helped form who I am today, and actually made me in many ways a better partner. So one
Mm-hmm.
could argue that Nancy going through that first marriage really made her a much better partner for Manny, and because she had so much to offer, so much love, and she certainly was really is appreciative of his love as well.
And also, that first experience helped her learn to care about herself and feel worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And she took that into her new relationship too. But yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point in terms of a lot of times when people divorce, they don't know if it's the right decision, or even if they do, it's a really like devastating conclusion, even if it does feel like the right move. And so we could do a whole show about that, but
You feel like a failure, and
yeah.
then it takes you a while to get back on your feet. And so Nancy probably felt the same way.
Mhm.
But you have no choice. You have to.
But also, I appreciated just her briefly touching on the importance of like you called it, estate planning, or getting your affairs in order as you get older and making decisions for yourself while you're in a clear state of mind to do so, because that's very empowering to make the decision yourself instead of having it made for you.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer for people. And yeah, you'd be surprised. Probably people don't do it probably because they
They
don't
don't.
want.
Most people don't like the idea. It's very uncomfortable
It's,
to A, deal
mm-hmm,
with your own mortality, but B, just take on the task of figuring out your money situation and your
mm-hmm,
stuff. Like, I don't know about you, but stuff comes into my house, nothing leaves, but stuff just keeps coming in. So
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
feel like I spent half my life decluttering, and yet it multiplies anyway.
Well, yeah, and that's pretty common for most people. So I've tried to declutter as much as possible, but good luck. Well, cool. Well, this has been a great episode, Michelle, and she was very inspiring. Take us out.
Sorry.
Take us out.
Yeah, I know. We just keep saying that word. I was trying to think of something else too, a different word. She is, if all my blessings in the world come true, she's where I would want to be.
If you're struggling with family, friends, or coworkers, in a bad relationship and wondering what to do, or you want a relationship and to set yourself up for success, then we want to talk to you. So make your appointment on Unrelating. To be a guest, ask a question, or recommend a topic, drop us an email at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook.